Mara Voss left in the middle of the night. She did not slam the door. She did not leave a letter. She simply picked up her small canvas bag, tucked her last $60 into her coat pocket, and walked down the long stone corridor of the pack house without looking back. The floors were cold beneath her feet. The halls were empty. The guards at the outer gate were half asleep, and they let her pass without a word, because she had always been invisible to them anyway. That was the thing about being the Alpha King's secret. Nobody really saw her. Outside, the winter air hit her face like a slap. She welcomed it. She needed something sharp and real to hold on to, because everything inside her chest felt like it was dissolving. 3 hours ago, she had stood in a crowded hall filled with the most powerful people in the Northern Territories, and the man she loved had looked directly at her and chosen someone else. He had spoken the old words out loud, the formal words, the irreversible ones, and severed the bond between them as easily as cutting a thread. She had not cried in front of him. She had not cried in front of anyone. She had simply turned and walked out, and now she was outside in the dark with $60 and nowhere to go, and the only thought in her mind was this: keep moving. So she did. Mara had never been the kind of woman who expected much from the world. She had grown up in a small, low-ranking pack at the far edge of Ashevale territory, the kind of community that paid its taxes to the crown and never expected anything in return. Her father built furniture. Her mother had died in a rogue attack when Mara was 9 years old. After that, it was just the two of them, and Mara learned early how to stretch a small amount of money into something that felt like enough. She was not bitter about her upbringing. She was practical. She knew how to fix a leaky faucet, how to cook a real meal from almost nothing, how to sit quietly with someone who was in pain without filling the silence with useless words. These were not the skills that impressed anyone at court, but they were the skills that got you through a life. She had never intended to meet Damon Ashevale. That was simply something that happened to her, the way weather happens, sudden, overwhelming, and entirely outside her control. The mate bond had announced itself the moment she walked into the Regional Trade Summit 2 years earlier. She had been there to represent her father's small carpentry collective, standing near the back of a large hall with a folder of supply records, when the Alpha King walked in through the main doors, and the entire room shifted. The air, the sound, the feeling of the floor beneath her feet. The bond hit her like a wave and pulled back just as fast, and she had stood there gripping her folder and thinking, quite calmly, absolutely not. She had watched him for 2 weeks before he found her. She had studied him from a careful distance, the way he moved through rooms, the way people arranged themselves around him, the way he listened to his advisors with his jaw tight and his eyes somewhere else. He was not warm. He was not the kind of man who made people feel comfortable. But there was something underneath all that careful coldness that she recognized, something that worked hard to feel nothing, which usually meant it felt everything, and had simply decided that was too dangerous. When he finally tracked the bond back to her, he had come alone, no guards. He knocked on the door of her small rented room at the Summit lodging house, and stood in the doorway looking slightly stunned, as if the bond had led him here, but some part of him had been hoping it was wrong. She had let him in, and offered him tea, because that was what she did, when she did not know what else to do. He had accepted it, sitting at her small table with his large hands wrapped around a plain ceramic mug, and they had talked for 3 hours about almost everything except what they both knew. That was the beginning. For 2 years, Mara had believed in him. She knew it was complicated. She was not naive. She understood the politics, the pressure, the gap between what they were to each other privately and what the world outside expected of an Alpha King. His advisors wanted a political match, a powerful alliance, someone with territory and title, and a name that meant something to the noble families. Mara was none of those things. She knew it. She never pretended otherwise. But she had believed he would choose her anyway. He had given her reasons to believe it. Small, private reasons. The way he sought her out after long council sessions, just to sit in the same room with her. The way he listened when she disagreed with him, which was often. The way he once told her, quietly, in the dark of an early morning, that she was the only person in his entire life who had ever spoken to him like he was just a person. She had held on to those moments. She had built something out of them in her mind that looked a great deal like a future. She should have paid more attention to what he was not saying. He never formally claimed her. That was the detail she had allowed herself to explain away for too long. He kept her close and kept her unnamed, and his advisors saw that space and filled it with Lady Seraphine Voth, daughter of the Eastern Alpha, a woman who wanted the crown the way some people want air. The pressure had built over months, quietly at first, then loudly, then in ways that were impossible to ignore. Damon had gone quiet, not cold exactly, just absent in some essential way, like a man who has already made a decision and is simply waiting for the right moment to say it out loud. At the winter convergence, he said it out loud. The pain of a severed bond was not something Mara could have prepared for. She had heard it described, everyone had, but the reality of it was something else entirely. It was physical. It was a tearing sensation deep in her chest, like something that had been part of her for 2 years was suddenly and violently removed. She felt it the moment he spoke the words, and she felt everyone in the hall watching her feel it, and she used every bit of strength she had to keep her face still. She walked out of that hall, and she kept walking. She walked for 2 days, hitching rides when she could, crossing into neutral territory, and then further south into the human border towns, where pack politics did not reach, and no one cared about bond marks or bloodlines. She found a cheap room above a laundromat in a small town called Deller's Cross. She slept for almost 20 hours. When she woke up, she lay still for a while and let herself feel everything she had been holding back. Then she got up, she washed her face, she went looking for work. The bakery was called Greta's, which was also the name of its owner, a sharp-eyed woman in her 70s, who had been running the place alone since her husband died, and who was tired but too proud to admit she needed help. Mara walked in, asked if there was work, and Greta looked her over for a long moment before saying she could start in the morning. Mara stayed for over a year. She scrubbed mixing bowls and learned to make rye bread and split firewood, and fixed the broken latch on the back window, and swept the front steps every morning before the sun came up. Greta, who asked very few questions and expected a great deal of work, was exactly the right person to be around during that period of Mara's life. She did not offer comfort. She offered purpose, which was far more useful. Mara grieved, but quietly and honestly, the way she did most things. She did not perform it. She did not drag it out longer than it needed to last. She let herself be sad, and then, slowly, she let herself be other things too. Focused, curious, occasionally even entertained. She made a friend in the woman who ran the post office 2 doors down. She started reading in the evenings. She adopted a cat that wandered into the bakery and refused to leave, which Greta pretended to disapprove of, while regularly slipping it scraps of chicken. She was not happy immediately, but she was building something, and building things had always been how she got through difficulty. After Greta's, she moved further east and enrolled in a small vocational program for herbal medicine and pack healing. The old methods, the ones her grandmother had passed down before she died. She had always had a talent for it. Now she had the training to go with the talent. She found work in a small community health clinic in a neutral border town, where she treated minor injuries, managed chronic pain with traditional remedies, and sat with people who were frightened and needed someone calm in the room. She was good at it. She was genuinely, quietly good at it, and she knew it. And that knowledge was its own kind of warmth. She thought about Damon sometimes, less and less as the months passed. When she did think about him, it was without the crushing weight she had carried in the beginning, more like thinking about whether she had survived. Difficult, real, over. She was not waiting for him. She was not hoping he would come. She had made her peace, and the peace was real, and she intended to keep it. Damon Ashvale began searching for her 3 months after she left. He told himself many things about why. It was duty. It was responsibility. An unclaimed, rejected mate wandering without protection was a liability to the territory. He was thorough in his reasoning, and he believed almost none of it. The truth was simpler and harder. He had understood his mistake the moment she walked out of that hall. He had stood at the dais watching her leave and felt something he had never felt before in his life. Not guilt exactly, but something larger and quieter. The deep and spreading recognition of having just destroyed something that could not be rebuilt. He was right, it could not be rebuilt. But he spent 3 years trying anyway. He sent trackers first. When they came back with nothing useful, he started going himself, quietly, without announcement, visiting border towns that his advisors found deeply confusing. He asked questions. He followed cold trails. He found her old room at Greta's bakery and stood in the doorway of that small, tidy space, while Greta looked at him with undisguised contempt and told him that Mara had moved on a long time ago and that he had no business looking for her. He stood in that room for a long time before he left. It smelled like dried herbs and wood smoke. There were small marks on the windowsill where she had kept plants. Whoever had come after her had repainted the walls, but she had left a small repair on the window latch. Neat, careful work. And he stood there looking at that latch and feeling like an enormous fool. He kept searching. He found her at a governance summit in the Eastern Neutral Zone, 3 years after the night she left. He was there for politics. He was always there for politics. He had become, in the years since the rejection, precisely the king his council had always wanted: efficient, controlled, excellent at managing territory, and absolutely hollow in any way that mattered. His political alliance with Seraphine functioned perfectly. They were both professionals. They both understood the terms. He was standing near the back of the main hall, counting the hours until he could leave, when he saw her. She was across the room, speaking to a human official with calm authority about healthcare access for low-ranking PAC members along the neutral border. She was dressed simply. Her hair was shorter than he remembered. She was gesturing at something on a document she held, and the official she was speaking to was nodding attentively, and she looked. This was the thing that stopped all the air in his lungs. She looked entirely like herself, settled, real, present in a way she had only ever been with him before, in private, and now she apparently just walked around like that all the time. She had not seen him yet. He stood still for a long moment. Then she turned, and she did. Her face went very still, not cold, just contained. She said something to the official she was speaking with, excused herself politely, and walked toward him. "Damon," she said. Just his name, nothing else. He said her name back and it came out wrong, too rough, too much feeling in 2 syllables. They found a side corridor. He had things prepared to say. He had thought about this conversation for 3 years, and had versions of it that were articulate and honest, and covered the necessary ground. He got approximately nowhere into any of them before she looked at him with calm eyes and told him she understood why he had done what he did. She had understood it even then. She did not need the explanation. He asked what she did need. She was quiet for a moment. "I needed to survive it," she said. "I did. I needed to build something that was mine. I did that too." She looked at him steadily, without anger, without the specific sadness he had been bracing for. "I don't know what you need from this conversation, but I want you to know that I'm not broken. I'm not standing here waiting for you to fix anything. I fixed it myself." "I know," he said. "I've been looking for you for 3 years." She nodded slowly. "Greta told me," she said, "when you came to the bakery." He had not known that. He stood there absorbing it, that she had known he was looking, had perhaps known for years, and had not reached out, had simply continued building her life and let him search. It was not cruelty. It was exactly what she had said. She was not waiting. "I'm not asking you to come back," he said. "I just needed to see you, to tell you, to say out loud, that it was wrong. What I did. It was wrong, and it cost me everything that mattered, and I have known that since the night you left." Mara looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "Thank you for that." It was not forgiveness, but it was not nothing. What followed was slow and careful, and built on honesty, in a way that neither of them had managed when they were young. He came to her town. He sat in the waiting room of the small clinic where she worked, and he waited for her shift to end, more than once, without asking anything of her except her time. She did not make it easy. She was not built for pretending. When she doubted him, she said so. When she was angry, she said that too. He listened without defending himself, which was new for him, and cost him something real each time. He restructured his council. He dissolved the political alliance, a long, costly process that his advisors fought at every stage. He introduced representation for low-ranking PAC members, a reform Mara had been quietly working toward in her border clinics for 2 years. He did not do these things to earn her back. He did them because he had finally become the kind of person who did the right thing when it was difficult, which he had not been before. She watched. She continued her work. She did not rush toward him. When she finally chose him, and it was a choice, a full and clear-eyed one, made by a woman who knew exactly who he was and what he had done, it was not because the bond compelled her. That bond had been severed. What remained was something quieter and stronger, built not from fate, but from two people who had both been through enough to understand what they were choosing. She chose him. He had spent years trying to be worth it. It was, in the end, the only love story either of them had ever actually lived inside, the one that cost them both something real, and taught them both what they were made of, and came back not as what it had been, but as something altogether more durable and true.